America, I am back in the building. Greg Kelly, I am your host. This is the Real Greg Kelly Show. I am here today to continue on the journey of enlightenment. I believe it is my duty and my honor to deliver the truth to the American people regarding the history of Marxism. We all know the saying, if we don't know our history, we are bound to repeat it. But before I get into this, I would be doing Americans in Nashville an injustice if I do not make it known that our thoughts and our prayers here at Too Rich Studios are with the families of those who were injured. We thank God that not many were injured. We thank God that there's only one known casualty. But we are grateful today that on Christmas morning, only a few people were harmed. Our thoughts and our prayers are with the law enforcement agencies that are investigating. We pray here that your investigation be swift, direct, and that justice is served on behalf of the people of the Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. Whew, God is good, and we thank you, Lord, for your hand of protection around these people. As I said, we are on a journey to enlightenment here at Too Rich Studios. We are going to embark on yet another journey into the entry point of Marxism into the American culture. Once again, I am your host, Greg Kelly, and you are watching The Real Greg Kelly Show. I will be right back with you in a moment to start this journey after this message. This is The Real Greg Kelly Show. We are coming to you live. They want us all blind, dumbfounded, blind stricken. They want us fighting against each other and divided against ourselves. We refuse to induce ourselves with lies. I want to build a foundation, something to give us an idea of my perspective. Nobody asked me for it, but I'm going to share it with you. The Real Greg Kelly Show. All right, America, I'm almost certain that we can go down memory lane really quick concerning some of the words of the supposed president-elect, Joe Biden, when asked about Antifa and their radical extremist Marxist movement in the streets of American cities all over America. He said that Antifa was an idea. Nothing real, not any reality, no reality attached to what we have seen take place right in America, right in our country. The looting, the stealing, the burning of buildings, assaulting innocent Americans who have opposing ideas. It's an ideology, a movement, but Joe Biden said it was an idea. It's an idea that somehow has the power to infiltrate American culture almost on every level. Every corner you turn, you can see the influence of Marxist ideology. What we're going to discover today, not per se the origin of the roots, but a major turning point in American culture, a major infantry point in American culture, as Marxists from the 1960s begin to make their stamp, to make their surge of advancement into the minds of human beings, into our everyday lives on some of the most influential platforms of media, radio, entertainment, music that our culture constantly digest. A means of mass brainwashing. We will find out when this began to take place. How did it come to be? How did Marxism get into the culture of America? What was the point of Marxism penetrating American culture? Who's involved in nurturing this ideology? Who's actually financing this attack? Who is fueling this cultural war on an international scale, is there any connection between the Marxism regime and movement of old and the Marxism movement that we see here in 2020? Which political party is pushing this agenda right in front of our faces as though we're morons and can't see it? So follow me as we begin our journey down the road of enlightenment into the way that Marxism penetrated the culture of our country. Let's begin.
The United States has undergone a cultural, moral, and religious revolution. And a militant secularism has arisen in this country. It's always had a hold on the intellectual and academic elites. But in the 1960s, it captured the young in the universities and the colleges, and we had this great battle, cultural war begin then nationally. And since then, if you will, secularism has really achieved dominance in the academic community and the intellectual community and the entertainment community in Hollywood, among part of the political community, but not the nation as a whole. However, it is much stronger than it was, and so this is the basis of the great cultural war we're undergoing right now. And this militant, it is an anti-Christian, anti-God, anti-traditionalist revolution. It's partly the sexual revolution has a lot to do with it and how people live. And so we are two countries now. We are two countries morally and socially and culturally and theologically, and cultural wars do not lend themselves to peaceful coexistence. One side prevails or the other prevails, and the truth is that while the conservatives, in my judgment, we won the Cold War with political and economic communism, we've lost the cultural war with cultural Marxism, which I think has prevailed pretty much in the United States, or is now the dominant culture, whereas those of us who are traditionalists, we are, if you will, the counterculture.
What exactly is cultural Marxism, the dominant culture of today? How did the founders of communism figure out a way to take over our country, not with guns and weapons, but with values and ideas? Let's take a closer look at this and see exactly how it happened.
Cultural violence. Not with guns, not with weapons, but with violent pursuit of the minds of our young people, the moral code under attack in America. And we all know that this code is Christian at its core. It's spirituality, our spirituality as American-loving people, as freedom-loving people, as patriots. We know that we find our strength, our great identity in God alone. Our Constitution reveals this reality, but yet there is still a secret militant attack on our young people. And this again is in the 60s America. This is in the 60s. And anti-God, anti-culture, anti-American Christian patriotic culture under attack, creating a great psychological, spiritual divide. If you listen to mainstream media, when we talk about the term division in America, we all know who gets the blame. Orange man bad. It's all Donald Trump's fault. There was no division in our country before Donald Trump took office. Now, was there? Or was there? So what's under attack? Hey, culture, spirituality, individuality. Capitalism is also under attack. We'll get into that a little later. But I want you to remember what was stated in the very first portion of this clip. There is no peaceful coexistence between the Marxist ideology and the Christian ideology. Let's look a little further, and you'll see what I mean.
there was a man named Karl Marx. Marx got an idea. His idea was that the workers of the world should unite and rise up to counter an evil foe, that foe being capitalism. Capitalism, the idea that people and private companies should be able to own the means of production and be free to earn and have as much as they wished, was anathema to Marx. Marx felt the state should own the means of production, as well as products produced, and then the state should distribute a fair share of all such products to each and every worker. Thus, in his book, The Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx thundered, "Workers of the world, unite!" Sure that he had a principle to unify all workers in every country, Marx looked forward to eventually taking over the world.
Eventually taking over the world. Here is the father of the Marxist ideology and his agenda, not an uncommon one. I want to take over the world. I must dominate the resources, the economic opportunities afforded to humans, and I must regulate where the money goes, evenly dispersed across the board. No matter who makes the most, they will not have the most. Capitalism is the enemy of Marxism. The enemy. Your God-given right to earn as much as you want, to educate as much as you want, is the enemy of some. But you have to ask yourselves, why in the world, with my freedom to learn and to gain and to store and to build, why would that be an enemy to someone? Why would that be adversarial to anybody unless they sought to control me, the human being? You see, Marxism is nothing more than a disguise for a totalitarian government wishing to rule all humans. And again, we don't need to look far into the manifesto of Karl Marx to see that that was his idea. And I'm telling you today, America, it is still the idea of the Marxists today. We don't have to look any further than the manifesto or any further than people like AOC, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, who under the guise of giving health care to all want to usher in a totalitarian government. Let's continue on the journey.
Some years after Marx failed, several of his disciples got a new idea on how to take over the world. One of his disciples, Antonio Gramsci, while where else but in prison, wrote up a series of plans, now known as the Prison Notebooks. In this plan, Gramsci announced, the workers of the world will unite only after the Long March is over. The Long March?
In other words, they had to get into the culture and change the way of people's thinking. And if people were thinking about patriotism and nation and God and country, that was a mechanism which was too resistant to Marxism. It could never take hold. So you had to erode and destroy that in the individuals. That began what's called the Long March through the institutions, through the seminaries, through the churches, through the media, through Hollywood, and all the rest of it, to create an anti-Christian culture which would destroy the Christian beliefs and convictions in the vast majority of the people, so they would embrace the ideas of Marxism, and they would embrace the ideas that they had rejected, and they would be open to a takeover, basically, by Marxists. Now, not political Marxists, but cultural Marxists.
Rather than workers uniting and marching into battle, thus seizing power through force, they would make a long march through the institutions. Institutions like the arts, cinema, theater, literature, schools, college, seminaries, newspapers, magazines, and what is now known as radio, TV, and the mass media. Once this march is over, all the barriers to the acceptance of Marxism will have been quietly and systematically removed.
So to get to that point, they said we have to destroy the culture. And what they were talking about was the Christian culture.
So let's open this up a little bit, my fellow Americans. Let's open it up wide and broad, so we can have clarity, precision of sight. The new idea, what does that represent? We've heard similar things called like the Green New Deal, the Great Reset, the Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong, the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab. And here's this guy writing a journal in jail talking about new ideas. But okay, so what do you mean by that? What does that mean? For 2,000 years of history, we have been, I'm going to say, tutored by the God of Scripture. Taught us the way to live, a moral standard and values, means for which we can self-govern, be good brothers and sisters to one another, be in support of one another, take a stand against tyranny and invaders of the free world. But see, this guy and a long list of other people connected to him from the past and now in the present believe that these moral attitudes and mindsets and these standards, these laws and precepts are ancient, no longer have a place in society. And the common thread is that we must take over the Christian values and destroy them in this country. That's the new idea. The idea of there's no absolute truth. You can have your own truth in spite of there being absolute truth. You don't have to adhere to what's real. Create your own fantasy. Create your own world. Live in it, even if it's by yourself. You have no need for community. Even though they speak of communes and people having all things in common, they even use scripture to justify this, by the way. And what is the means? You can't just walk around and talk this, in your local gas station, in your grocery store, have conversations. You might get a little stir. But the goal was to infiltrate every institution, educational institutions, judicial, governmental, the media institutions, and systematically wear away, tear down, and eat at the culture of America. Don't turn to God. Turn to yourself. Turn to the government. You can trust us. They would say, the government would say, you can trust us. But we know we cannot. We don't have to look very far to discover right now in 2020 that no, we cannot trust the government. No, we cannot depend on them. We're not even going to get into that little puny $600 stimulus check, America. You can't depend on the government. But you know what? The government wants to come to a place where they can totally depend on you and your money. Let's look a little further.
If you can break people away from religious affinities, for example, where they would turn to their community, their religious community, for support and help, or they would turn to Scripture for answers to certain perplexing questions. If they have an affinity to their religion, they might say, well, we're not going to go along with government because it's contrary to my religion. So cultural Marxism would attack religion of all kinds. Doesn't make any difference, because there was another place where people could go other than to the government for support and for answers.
We, the people, will have thus been indoctrinated or brainwashed into seeing the wisdom of Marxism and the folly of capitalism. Thus, the door to socialism and communism will be open, and the door to a constitutional republic closed, because the success of cultural Marxism means the demise of the U.S. Constitution.
Just a little food for thought, Marxist, whoever you are, wherever you are. Americans do not desire your Marxist government. We are constitutional members of society. We love freedom, the pursuit of our own happiness, working with our own hands. You will not destroy the Constitution of America without a fight. The common thread, people, is a culture shift. The old way of living in peace, love, and harmony with all fellow Americans is outdated. We are the enemy of Marxists. We are the countercultural people, because in their minds, they have taken over our culture. And I just want to usher you into the reality of it may very well be true, but that doesn't mean that we will stand down, because we will not stand down. Let's continue.
Let's back up a moment. How did cultural Marxism get into the United States? Some brief history. In 1923, members of the Marxist Communist Party set up an institute at Frankfurt University in Germany. This institute was named the Institute for Social Research. Later, it would become known as simply the Frankfurt School. These new Marxists, under the direction of Max Horkheimer, had seen the old Lenin Marxists fail. The workers of the world did not unite in World War I. Further, they realized why. Antonio Gramsci, the disciple who wrote the prison notebooks, had it right. Marxism could only flourish after a long march through the cultural institutions. Now, the mantra would be, change Western culture, and then the workers will unite.
After Marx, there were a group of Marxists who wisely decided that you could bring this collectivist society to a nation through culture as well, by introducing certain values and concepts that would break down the family, for example. If you could somehow break down the family unit so that it was no longer self-sustaining and no longer valued in a society, then that would leave individual members who formerly could turn to the family for support in times of need. They would now be cut loose. They would be without a place to go in times of need. So now they have to turn to the government.
Destroy Christian values, destroy the church, and it's only fitting that the family would be next on that list of things to destroy. Because the Marxists don't want us to have a system of support, whether it be church community, whether it be our families, whether it be our friends, whether it be fellow Americans, fellow patriots. They don't want us to exist with a mindset and a heart position to where we are willing to reach out and be of assistance to our fellow men and women, our countrymen, our brothers and our sisters. So this is not just an attack on the nuclear family. This is an attack on the family of the universe. Somehow severing us apart from the reality that we are indeed one people, that we have one creator. Wanting to separate us from the reality that we have many, many things in common and very few things that divide us. No, they want to paint a picture that we're simply divided because we have no identity, we have no purpose, just exist as some other thing than a part of a greater family. No. We must create an atmosphere, a climate where hopelessness, frustration, and anger set in, so that when troubled times come, you'll never look to another fellow human being, you'll look to the state. And once you start looking to the state, you become property of the state. Once the state starts issuing out handouts, you become property of those who are handing out the welfare. This is the destruction of individual responsibility And this is also the destruction of the structure called family that develops and nurtures people to become independent, but always remembering where to go when they need help. Why do they want us dependent on them? Let's keep watching.
But what exactly is the march? And who was marching? What values has the long march through the institutions rolled over? Let's hear it from some of the Frankfurt School graduates themselves, like George Lukács, Antonio Gramsci, Charles Reich, Herbert Marcuse, Theodor Adorno, Erich Fromm, Wilhelm Reich, and Max Horkheimer.
Marx got it all wrong. The workers are not up to being the vanguard of the communist revolution. Let's translate Marxism into cultural terms.
And Herbert Marcuse.
The West is guilty of genocidal crimes against every civilization and culture it has encountered. America and Western civilization are the world's greatest repositories of racism, sexism, nativism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, fascism, and Nazism. American society is oppressive, evil, and undeserving of loyalty.
Wow. Wow, this guy lived a long time ago, but man, does his language sound so very modern and so very relevant to the times that we are currently living in. Do I need to remind you of the people groups that speak this same language of hate toward American culture? I don't have to get into that, right? So you guys already know who Black Lives Matter is, RevCom, Antifa. Yeah. So you guys do. Oh, okay. I'm just making sure because it's kind of like, like it's like, is this guy like, I don't know, did he come back or, is he somewhere alive in a cave? No, he's not. It's been handed down from one generation to the next. And notice now, it's not 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds still preaching this hate. It's men and women that are in their early 20s. Some of them are still teenagers. Xenophobia, racism, sexism, oppressive to all nations of the world. America is a culture of terror. World bullies. I know you've heard it all before. Now you know where it comes from. Let's keep looking.
George Lukács.
I see the revolutionary destruction of society as the one and only solution. A worldwide overturning of values cannot take place without the annihilation of the old values and the creation of the new ones by the revolutionary.
Lukács' gift to America later became known as cultural terrorism. Gifts such as radical sex education in public schools, covering such subjects as free love, outdatedness of monogamy, irrelevance of religion, and the archaic nature of the middle-class family. Women were called upon to rebel against the sexual mores of the day, such being the core values of Christianity and Western culture. His ideas later became the basis for the sexual revolution, embraced by a generation of drug-challenged baby boomers.
Those same drug-challenged baby boomers, and I know some of you listening may be of that age group, but didn't participate. Maybe you've heard some of that lingo back in the day. I'm sure you remember what free love is. You remember, the hippie movement. Hey, what was that? Woodstock? Yeah. As I was reading years ago about, these events, that movement, I didn't ever look into what they actually believed. It just seemed to be so American, so free and so open. But in actuality, it was a rebellion against the culture of Christianity. It was an open rebellion against the culture that had yet made America one of the most successful nations, and now at this point, the most successful nation in the history of mankind. But I never knew that. I never knew that these people hated America. I don't even know if a lot of those brothers and sisters realized that what they were ascribing to was American hate either. And it's the same today. There are many people that ascribe to Marxism because it just sounds so right. It's socialism, Marxism, communism, they kind of fit together. We'll get into that a little later. But it just sounds so noble. Let's make life better for all people, for the greater good of all people. Let's adopt this system that gives everybody a fair chance, especially us African Americans, because we're the most oppressed. It just sounds so noble, but yet it is so sinister, and we will see.
Although Gramsci died in 1937, his prison notebooks lived on as the blueprints to de-Christianize the West.
The civilized world has been thoroughly saturated with Christianity for 2,000 years. Any country grounded in Judeo-Christian values cannot, therefore, be overthrown until those roots are cut. But to cut the roots, to change culture, a long march through the institutions is necessary. Only then will power fall into our laps like ripened fruit.
And the new generation of freedom-loving, authority-challenged baby boomers were quite willing to accept the bait and take a toke.
Turn on, tune in, drop out.
Yes, our prison planner, Antonio Gramsci, had quite a dream. The only way a Marxist revolution could be successful was if the heat shield of capitalism, Christianity, were first destroyed.
There it is again. We must kill God. Atheism. There is no God. There is no law. There is no truth. Do whatever you want to do. Do as thy wilt. I believe it's called the law of Thelema. The evil Aleister Crowley was a big fan of do as thy wilt. That is the whole of the law. But there it is again. We must kill God. In essence, that means we must destroy the knowledge of God, the influence of God in America. A lot of these guys that are hard at work right now attempting to destroy the fabric of our nation are masquerading as Catholics and Christians. Did you forget they're taking a long march through the institutions, and the church is one of them. The last documentary I did on George Soros pointed to the reality that even Soros is paying off churches, entire church movements, to brainwash, manipulate its followers for his own selfish gain, which again is to destroy American culture. AKA destroy the church, AKA kill God. It becomes even more sinister and even more interesting. America, as we watch this, we are going to learn just how evil this movement is. And it is evil. Doesn't look like it on the surface to those who've already been brainwashed to a certain degree. A lot of these people involved really believe that they're a part of something great. But it's anti-American at its core, anti-God at its core. Let's keep watching.
Charles Reich.
There is a revolution coming. It will not be like revolutions of the past. It will originate with the individual, with culture, and it will change the political structure only as its final act.
Reich thus helped shape the minds of the American 60s youth with his runaway best-selling book, The Greening of America. Gramsci and Marx were now reaching their target audience, and the long march was in progress.
In the 1960s, the church pulled back from the culture. You had the first Sex and Satanism film. You had the first X-rated film where the pastor takes the boy up to his room in Broadway to get on his knees but not to pray. You had all of the perversion. You went from 100% broad audience films that anybody could see to 82% R-rated movies, which were restricted. You had a tremendous loss of viewership at the movie theaters. Even though television had been around for 20 years, you went from 44 million weekly attendance to 17 million weekly attendance. And so basically what happened, the church gave up in the mid-60s. It gave up on prayer in schools. It gave up on being a force in society. And Johnson shackled the church when he said that when he used the 501c3 to say the churches couldn't talk about politics, and the church just buckled under. When prayer was taken out of school, the church buckled under. When the church collapsed from Hollywood, they buckled under. So it was the church's internal collapse, and that has happened before in history, and unless people get revival, reformation, renewal, we will never reclaim the culture.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing statement in regard to infiltrating the political world as the last and final step. I believe we're right there at the brink of that step coming to its completion. I mean, the church falling back in the 60s, I wasn't even born then. I can only read about it. But I'm sure there are people out there who recognize and remember when prayer was taken out of schools and God was removed from school. The Ten Commandments was taken out of the halls of justice. And I think we're looking right at what happens when you take God out of places in our society. But how about the handicapping and the hog tying of the voice of the church in relationship to corrupt politicians, corrupt politics? The 501c3 tax law forbade the church to even speak on matters related to politics. So the church that said, okay, well, we'll keep our money, I guess. We'll keep our little congregations, but we won't get involved in the culture. We won't defend the culture. Thank God that not all church leadership took that stance. But I'm only mentioning this because, once again, we need the church to take a stand in this hour and to reclaim the land that it gave up for money, in some cases, a compromise. I mean, even some churches took money from the government that forbade it to speak out against it. It's kind of like I'll give you this over here. Just hush. Just don't say anything. Doesn't even sound far-fetched. Especially in this climate in America today, nothing comes close to sounding impossible or just absolutely asinine at this point when it comes to the level that some people will stoop to gain power. But remember, this is in the 1960s. The question I have is just how much ground has been gained in the Marxist movement from that time, America, just from that time alone. We already know that it was 1923 when the Frankfurt University was established. I mean, we're talking in the 20s. I don't know if any one of us were born. I hope you weren't. If you are, man, you got to show me how you stayed alive for so long. Give me some of the juice. But just how much ground has been gained, how much territory has been taken from America, from the 1920s, from the 1960s until 2020. Can't speak on politics. We already see what's happening with the censorship program, this campaign of silencing American voices, violating our First Amendment. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Let's go a little further.
As Hudson Institute scholar John Fonte wrote, Max Horkheimer and Gramsci believe that there are no absolute moral standards that are universally true for all human beings outside a particular historical context. In other words, to the Frankfurt School, values come from society or the state collective.
Same? Yes. It's relativism.
Collectivism implies that if something is important enough, then the state should step in and make sure that everybody conforms, whether they want to or not. So the essence of collectivism in a political sense is that it employs the use of coercion to require people to work together. And once coercion enters, then you are actually participating in a negative social conduct, which is in many cases worse than the social condition that you're trying to overcome by the collective action. People are not given free will. They're required to do this and that because the majority has decided this is for the greater good of the greater number and so forth. Whereas individualism works toward the same goals, but they do so in the environment of freedom. So it's the difference between freedom and coercion.
Now, well, have we heard that term before? Collectivism. John Fontaine. No standards that govern all people universally. That's collectivism. Values don't come from God. Man gets to determine what his values are. There is no reference point. There is no higher standard than man's standard, which in most cases seems to always lean toward the self-serving. No. Collectivism is being coerced to think that in order for the good of all people, we must all stand down and take orders from a group of elites who seem to understand the world and understand our economy and understand even our own basic necessities and our own ambitions better than we do. Let's be subservient. Let's lay down our rights and bow down and worship the elite. They're going to take care of us. And when freedom-loving people like us take a stand and say, hell no, we're looked at, scrutinized, and demonized as the enemy. And all we're doing is exercising our free will. But in collectivism, socialism, communism, Marxism, there is no free will. It doesn't matter what form it takes. It doesn't matter who you support. Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the radical left, the squad, AOC, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. It doesn't matter what side of the political field you're on, because there are Republicans who adhere to this same nonsense, but it's all about controlling your will. Majority rule, which is why it must be a fabricated voting system so it can appear that the majority wants to end fracking, wants globalized or central health care. They want to be vaccinated on a global scale. They want to be pushed out of their jobs for the sake of safety of COVID-19. Oh, we so depend on you, American state, the state of America. No, we are a republic, not a democracy. There's no such thing as majority rule here in America. I have a right to do whatever I want to do, no matter how many people desire to do the opposite, and so do you. But not in Marxism, not in a Marxist governmental structure. There is no free will. How do you get someone to yield their freedom to you? We're going to find out. Just a few moments.
Not to be outdone by Karl Marx, a brilliant mind or two at the Frankfurt School soon came up with several of their own ideas, the foremost known as critical theory. The idea behind critical theory is to challenge all previously accepted standards in every aspect of life from a Marxist perspective. Standards such as Abe Lincoln was honest, home is where the heart is, democracy and capitalism are good, the founders believed in freedom. In doing this, every negative thing one could possibly say about America was dredged up, circulated in books, movies, TV, schools, colleges, and even the clergy, so that the youth would be endlessly indoctrinated. Things like white men killed the Indians, fathers were repressive, God is dead, the founders had slaves.
Critical theory. Now, where have we heard that? Critical race theory? Sound familiar? Criticizing the very core of American values. We all know that it's Christian, and I am going to continue to tell you that this is an attack on our Christian values. All of this negativity about white America, where did it come from? Critical race theory. White men killed Indians. White men invented slavery. The lie detector test determined that is a damn lie. But not many want to have that conversation. God is dead. God is dead. It's the whole of the Marxist movement. It is an atheist movement that wants you to have absolutely nothing to do with your creator. And by default, if you have no love or no knowledge of your creator, you will have no love for your fellow human beings. And anarchy will break out in this nation, giving the state a reason to further exercise total control of people who have no control. It's a setup, America. It is an absolute setup. But we will not be set up. The brainwashing project of America began years ago. People like Edward Bernays, the father of marketing, the scientists of that day who investigated, methods of manipulating the human emotion and how to cause or create spontaneous purchases of products that are plastered over the TV screens and broadcast through the airwaves on a repetitive cycle. We call it a broadcasting program. And a program it really is. Programming your mind. All of this negativity from race theory, critical race theory, permeated the minds of the people and the youth of the 60s. It has been done again. I believe a continual process of brainwashing has been taking place in our educational institutions, in our music, media, and entertainment institutions. It is no longer a secret. We have been infiltrated. Just listen to some of the names of the people involved. I don't even need to speak on this. I don't even talk about this. I'm just going to let the clips play. From now on, I'll say a few things, but you just got to see this for yourself because I won't do the clip any justice. Just take a look.
But when the consciousness-challenged baby boomers repeatedly heard that the establishment, as they came to refer to it, was a bunch of racist, overly religious, sexually deprived sexists who were xenophobic Indian killers and anti-Semites, they internalized the criticisms. Soon their movies and songs began to reflect these values, spreading them throughout the nation's youth culture. Critical theory was doing its job, especially on people like Charles Manson and John Lennon. Even though the reality-challenged baby boomers of the 1960s were the most free, most affluent, and most privileged of any youth in any age, they were bored with their lives and swallowed the Frankfurt School's propaganda like a hit of California Sunshine. Books like The Death of the Family, Escape from Freedom, The Mass Psychology of Fascism, The Sexual Revolution, The Joy of Sex, and The Authoritarian Personality flew off the shelves. Counterculture drug movies like The Trip, Easy Rider, The Wild Angels, The Wild Bunch, and Born Loser played theaters endlessly. Books like Authoritarian Personality were particular hits because they attacked the patriarchal family unit, a deeply Christian institution. So along came movies depicting the family unit as sexually repressed and dysfunctional. Movies like Battle of the Sexes, How to Handle Your Wife, Harold and Maude, The Graduate, Bonnie and Clyde, Carnal Knowledge, Bob and Ted and Carol and Alice, Boys in the Band, The Godfather, and Kramer versus Kramer instilled cultural pessimism about family.
How do you infiltrate a nation culturally? That's how you do it, folks. Music, movies, literature. It's never been more clear to me how important those three forms of expression impact the world. I mean, I like the term that was used to describe the baby boomer generation, a reality-challenged group of kids. And if you look around in this country today, it is very easy to see a reality-challenged youth, especially the people who, for some reason, don't realize that people of color in this country are freer than they've ever been, but yet they still scream and chant black oppression. A clear detachment from reality. Maybe they just want to be a part of a movement, but I don't want to be a part of a movement that's not based in truth. Charles Manson, has anybody ever listened to his music? I mean, even the great John Lennon was anti-American. But yet, all of these anti-Americans benefit from American culture. I mean, it is such a level of insanity that I can't even explain with words. There are no words to make this clearer or do it any justice. But I embrace the reality-challenged youth of our country. All of this is, at the core of it, is the demoralization of America. Historically, anytime the moral fabric of a nation begins to break down, all of its economic systems and judicial systems and governmental systems fall with it, because it becomes more and more prevalent, more and more constant and consistent that men and women act out in evil ways. This will not be the story of our nation. And the only way to stop it is to fight against it. Let's continue.
By targeting the family unit, the cultural Marxists knew they could eventually destroy the middle class of the United States. Why? Because the family unit is the basic building block of the middle class. Destroy the middle class, and you eventually destroy the economic engine of the United States. Destroy the economic engine of the U.S. and its political structure, built on capitalism and the Constitution, crumbles.
I just recently had some shares stolen from me on the stock market by our government, who seized 80% of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac shares. I'm like, how could this happen? They seized, private property.
The whole point of a socialistic society is to do four things. Marx talks about destroying the family, 2, destroying property, 3, destroying religion, and 4, destroying the nation. And what you end up with is the gulag, where the whole country becomes the Soviet Union.
It becomes the Soviet Union. The entire nation becomes the Soviet Union. The entire nation. You know, all of this squeezing of the middle class and the destruction of the family, the destruction of private property. I mean, does it not remind you of the chants of Antifa marching through the streets saying, "Death to America! Death to America!" It is death to America when you destroy the family, when you destroy the economy, when you steal away private property, when you destroy religion. This is the foundation of this great nation. And we are at war. America, make no mistake about it. We are at war. I will say it in every broadcast that I do, every recording that I do. I will proclaim, we are at war and we need to get ready. They've got a huge head start on us. We've got a lot of catching up to do. But death to America is the sole idea, the cause of this movement. We cannot let it happen. Let's continue.
Yes, critical theory is diabolical genius. The cultural Marxist could accomplish what Marx, Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin only dreamed of accomplishing. Whereas Lenin, Trotsky, and Stalin took Marx's ideas and delivered the brutal Soviet Union to the world, Gramsci, Lukács, and Marcuse took Marx's ideas and delivered user-friendly cultural Marxism to America.
You see, what they, in essence, did was they rewrote the book, made it a little more user-friendly, but it never changed the idea. It never changed the agenda. And I'll show you what I mean.
The Supreme Court has been converted into a fighting ally of secularism in the wars against traditionalism in the United States. The Supreme Court has perverted the Constitution. It has usurped power that belongs to the states and imposed secular views and values on the states and on the communities, making decisions that used to be made democratically at the local level.
This time it seems Marx won. Today, post-Engel, politically correct baby boomers are so completely immersed in the Frankfurt School's cultural pessimism, they can't see the forest for the trees. They're fish in a bowl of muddy water. They're Neo in the Matrix. They swim in it. They absorb it through every pore of their beingness. Starting in the 1960s, cultural Marxism has woven its values into every American's very existence. Khrushchev was right when he said, "We will bury you."
A few segments back, one of the great Frankfurt School graduates made a statement about the invading or the infiltrating of the political systems in America that's the end game. Oh, we know we've taken ground now. We're in the house of justice. We're in politics. Do we need to look any further than our own Supreme Court to see the level of success that the Marxist regime has in America? The introduction of new values that are secular outside of our godly values, the ones that have sustained us and increased our territory, our reach and influence in the world. We've been infiltrated. And it's clear. This cultural hatred is in the White House, America. The Supreme Court the Senate, the Congress, all the way down to the city council members, to even the mayors. I mean, I don't even need to go into the list of mayors that we know are lunatics, do I? I know I don't need to make that run down the road. Hey, I'm sure we are all fully and thoroughly abreast on these lunatics and these unbelievable creatures who are clearly detached from reality. We've seen it over and over. The planting of cultural hatred, cultural pessimism. Death to America. God is dead. It reminds me of people back in the Bible times as they laid siege on Israel and asked, "Where is your God now?" As Christ hung on the cross. If you are truly the Son of God, call him and have him come get you down. In one story I've heard, the other one said, "Hey, if you are the Son of God, get yourself down." But this is the same mindset that the Marxists have as they lay siege on our nation. They want to know, where is your God now? Where is your Son of God now? As they mock our faith, as they mark our God, as they mock our freedom and steal our freedom and mark our standards, and they mock the Constitution. This is the political correctness mindset of Marxism. You speak against God, you are a dinosaur. You are outdated. There is no God. God is dead. This is the mindset of our young people in America today. Not all of them, but a lot of them. We must find a way to undo what's been done. It is time to pray and it is time to fight. Let us continue.
To understand what socialism is, one must first understand what communism is. Communism is an economic system whereby the state owns the means of production. Means of production meaning capital. Capital meaning money, machinery, labor, land, and resources. Socialism is an economic system whereby the state owns the fruits of production. Fruits of production meaning revenues generated by the means. Revenues generated by the means is another way of saying taxes.
Extreme of socialism was the Soviet system, communism. So there was no pricing structure, and it's a failed system. It can't work because prices are so important.
So communism owns and confiscates the means and fruits of production, whereas socialism confiscates just the fruits of production in the form of excessive taxes. Socialist states in Europe, for instance, confiscate as much as 50% of the money citizens pay for retail products and services. This is the outrageous sales tax a socialist state demands.
Uh-oh, America. In my heart, I feel like a group of people listening right now after seeing that clip and hearing those words. The light switch. The light bulb just came on, didn't it? Socialism, communism, they kind of work hand in hand. Even though they're two different ideals, they have a common foundation. It is to destroy capitalism. And so therefore it's easy for the enemy of my enemy to team up. We look no further than taxes, an inflation of taxes. Who's going to raise our taxes, America? Rhetorical question. We already know. Who wants to take money from the wealthy and disperse it to the non-wealthy so there can be a level economic field? Another rhetorical question. America, we already know the answer to this question. We know. We understand what the powers that be on the left desire for this nation. Total reliance on the government. But they had to sell us something that we would buy. They sold us coronavirus. Many of us bought it. And now we're willing to give away everything we have for safety that we don't even need. In the face of that, raise taxes. In the midst of a recession, raise taxes. Economy on its way out, being squeezed tighter and tighter by the vice grip of tyranny. Raise taxes. This is dictatorship. We're going to take your money, take your jobs, take your freedoms, give you a little bit of money. But we're not going to open the economy back up, so you'll find yourself at the mercy of the government. This is the infiltration of governmental tyranny by way of communism, socialism, and Marxism, the three-headed monster. When I say three-headed monster, I kind of see Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Nancy Pelosi all in one. I'm sure you get my drift. But this is what it looks like. We don't have to look far. It's right in front of our faces right now. I'm just turning on the lights a little brighter, that's all. Stay with me.
Thus, a socialist state rapes the people mainly through excessive taxes. A fascist state rapes the people mainly through excessive debt. Both ultimately rape the people through taxes because debt causes inflation, a hidden tax.
See the strategy? You work hard, we want your taxes. We're going to raise them up a little bit. You know, hey, go get a loan. Put you in debt. Get a bunch of credit cards. Buy everything you want. We'll give it to you. Nah, you know what? We're just going to crash the economy. Hyperinflation. The market goes down, the prices go up because there's a greater demand for it. Are you getting my drift? Are we seeing who's behind the wheel here in 2020? It's the same game plan. It's almost like it's redundant. I've said this so many times. Same game plan, different coaches, different players, same strategy. Nothing's changed. We're just getting closer and closer to this nonsense actually becoming a reality in America. But we can't let that happen. Are we going to let that happen? In my spirit, I hear a resounding no. Hell no, we're not going to let it happen. Let's keep watching.
As we have seen, the Constitution gives Congress the power and the responsibility to provide for the general welfare of the nation. So important is the idea of general welfare. This is the only term that is stated twice in the Constitution, once in the preamble and again in Article 1. Unfortunately, a lot of people interpret this term to be a green light for massive social security, the so-called nanny state, which pays for everything and then demands the right to regulate everything.
This is for all of those out there who want this governmental handout. All you lazy, crumb-snatching leeches who don't want to work, who want reparations, who stand behind jellyback leadership like the pimp. He's so insignificant, I can't even remember his name. Oh yeah. Al Sharpton. A welfare state? For those of you who want to be taken care of by the government, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? In a land where you have every opportunity to work with your hands, to educate, to learn how to work better with your hands, acquire skill, so you can become an asset. But no, you don't want to be an asset. You want to be babysitted. You want to be taken care of like you're incapable. You want to continue to be called incapable. You're okay with being called incapable. You're okay with being branded as a social handicap and a mental handicap. But that's not what America was made for. It was made for those who wanted to forge a brighter future for themselves and their families. That's what American is. America is not a skin color related issue. It is an ambition issue. This nation was formed for the ambitious, those who wanted to push the lines of success, who went against governmental tyranny, an idea of freedom and justice for all. For all. Not welfare and government cheese and handout checks every month. Welfare checks every month. For all. Listen, if that's all you want in life, that's fine. Go to Venezuela. If that's all you want in life is to sit back and be taken care of, go somewhere where that's the going rate. Like that's the going thing. Lay back, we'll take care of you. And I'm not trying to be rude, but you don't belong in a place that doesn't demand that you work. This place just says, if this is what you want, we'll afford you every opportunity to be successful. But if that's not what you want, you're in the wrong country. That's all I'm saying. If the shoe fit, wear it. If it don't, take it off. Don't get mad at me. It's real. Let's go forward.
Well, the Constitution was written to limit the size and scope of government. It was to recognize that government was there to protect our liberties. It does not endorse the welfare system at all. If we just followed the Constitution, the government would be very much smaller, maybe 80% smaller.
This may be the cultural Marxist's dream of a socialist state. But as a result, we now have minimum wage laws, child labor laws, federal disability laws, Medicaid laws, public housing laws, rent laws, entitlement laws, food stamp laws, and even extensive pet laws. Over 25,000 laws are enacted every year. Many by congressmen that have been bought and paid for by multinational corporations, all non-people entities.
For everybody that wants that reparations check, that wants that welfare check, what you don't understand is every time you stick your hand out and the government puts something in your hand, all you've done is surrender more of your own rights. It reminds me of the new Wonder Woman movie. I think it was 1984. You know, this villain could grant every wish. But what you didn't know is that every time he granted you something, he took something from you. He took what he wanted. I was like, man, this guy is a socialist. This guy has to be a socialist. You got your hand stuck out, don't want to work. Don't want to use your skills. Don't even want to acquire skills if you don't have any. You want to depend on the government to give you food, clothing, and shelter. And every time you do it, they get more money, get more rights. And now that big corporations who have more control of our government than government does itself, they see our plight as becoming slaves and they want to take advantage. They want to cash in. They want to look like the Chinese Communist Party. Well, they could just, hey, let's create a concentration camp, put a couple of 100,000 people in it, get free labor. Let's get all the money for ourselves. Hey, we'll just throw them a few pieces of bread, some beans, and a few glasses of water, a nice little bed, a blanket. Give them somewhere to wash. That'll be okay. That sounds like, the housing projects in these inner cities. And I'm not speaking out against people that live in those conditions. I'm saying that the only way to come out of those conditions is if you choose to, because the damn government will not assist you in coming out. They want you to remain their property. And by God, please stop blaming the white man for being in project housing, because it ain't his fault. Just stop. That shit's dead. Success is a choice. And if you're choosing the government to grant you success, you're mistaken. If you think that living in a house that you barely pay for, getting food that you don't have to pay for, riding in a car that, is fairly cheap because it wasn't paid for by your money, if you think that's success, you've got it wrong. You have an opportunity as an American to forge your own way. But again, if you want that governmental handout, remember, every time your hand gets filled, old faithful government, old big brother is secretly taking your rights from you. Just keep watching. You'll see what I mean.
Because term limits have not been established for the Congress, most congressmen have been able to stay in office for decades.
Again, this is the Supreme Court. States were enacting and imposed term limits on their members of Congress in something like half the American states, and the Supreme Court overthrew it and took the right away from the states to impose term limits on their own members of Congress. And what did Congress do? They said, that's fine with us, because we'll stay in power.
It seems the more a congressman is entrenched, the more he is able to build a social network, a network of cronies. Clearly, good relationships with fellow congressmen serve many productive purposes, but such a network can also be abused. After all, it's much easier to minimize the risks of vote swapping, a form of collusion, amongst cronies. It's much easier to justify corporate campaign contributions, a form of bribery, amongst cronies. And it's much easier to get away with earmarks, a form of fraud, amongst cronies. Thus, an entrenched Congress, especially one cast into only two major political parties, would seem to be in the perfect position to imperceptibly usurp power from the people and place it into the hands of the corporate fascists that have hijacked Congress.
I don't need to say anything, do I? We already see that this is what's happening in our country right now, right? I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page, America. That's all. I don't have to go any further, do I? It's plain, right? That's what I was thinking myself. We're already witnessing an embedded Congress, Senate, Supreme Court. Our country is right now hanging in the balances because of those three governmental bodies infiltrated by Marxist criminals, haters of America, haters of the Constitution, hatred for your freedom. We're already dealing with it. We're already here right now. So, like I said, I don't really need to get into it, do I? I didn't think so. I didn't think so. But let's just go a little further. I want you to see everything is playing out just how it's supposed to, according to the Marxists. But I don't think they planned for us patriots. I think they made a mistake. It's called biting more than you can chew. I know you've heard of it. Let's keep watching.
No, I don't think so, not at all. Our democracy has been hacked. Money plays the dominant role in politics today, and it really is badly in need of reform. Corporations are not persons. Money is not speech. Big anonymous contributors should not call the shots.
Wait a minute, was that Al Gore? 2013? Al Gore. Wow. Wow. Al Gore talking about politicians being bought and paid for, being influenced by money and big corporations. That's the climate change guy. But if you ask him now if that's the case, he'd deny it. America, I want every one of you to know that this soon to be, we hope not, this fraudulent administration has lied and lied and lied about the oppression that they intend to enact upon the American people. But I promise you, when you hear Joe Biden talk about tax raising, he is imposing financial oppression to bring this economy down, to bring your futures down so that they can usher in an era where people are codependent on the state. This is Marxism. This is it. And for all freedom-loving people, we cannot stand for this tyranny. We cannot stand for this tyranny.
The terms spreading the wealth, redistribution, and wealth disparity are meaningless in an America that truly responds to the original intent of the Constitution.
The proper function of government is not to provide, but to protect. Because if you're going to provide for some, you must have the authority and the power to take from others. And once you're in that business of taking from some and giving to others, now you're in the business of redividing the wealth. And that gives you tremendous power over the citizenry. And it always leads to abuse of power and eventually to totalitarian regimes.
Many have commented that we now have a monstrous tax system, a system that taxes its citizens far more than citizens of the Boston Tea Party era.
If 2 to 3% taxation justified a revolution in 1776, why doesn't 50% and growing justify a revolution? If a few little excise taxes on pieces of paper and tea justified open lawlessness from these rebels that we're all celebrating, why don't the myriad of incomprehensible, unavoidable, crushing taxes, state, local, and federal, why don't they justify a revolution today?
Our government not only taxes us at every transaction, it's in our faces at every turn, endlessly regulating what we can and cannot do. All these regulating laws and their expensive enforcement programs are turning us into a police state.
Well, America, my good, freedom-loving, patriotic, God-loving Americans, the spirit of 1776 is alive. And I have a message for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm not really sure what you believed in your heart would happen when it came down to you trying to lay this nation siege and bring the American people to their knees. I don't know what school of thought you ascribed to when you thought that we would be afraid of anyone or anything and lay down our freedoms without cost. But I do want you to know that if you were looking for a fight, you damn well will get one. But if you're looking for sheep, you're in the wrong country. That I guarantee you. I want to conclude this documentary on enlightenment and to coming full circle with knowing how Marxism infiltrated American culture with an eye-opening clip about who President-elect Joe Biden really is and what his agenda is And I say to you, America, God is not dead. He is alive. And he is alive in each and every one of you. God bless America. This is our final clip, and I just want to tell you that I love you. I thank you for all of your support, all of your love. I'll finish up my whining and my mushiness right after this clip.
So no new taxes, $400,000
No
a
new
down.
taxes. There would be no need.
Would you bring back the individual mandate?
Yes, I bring back the individual mandate.
So no new taxes, $400,000
No
a
new
down.
taxes. There would be no need. First thing I do is going to repeal this Trump tax cut. Oh, not a joke.
So no new taxes, $400,000
No
a
new
down.
taxes. There would be no need. So every single solitary person, their capital gains are going to be treated like real income, and they're going to pay 40% of their capital gains on their capital gains tax.
So no new taxes, $400,000
No
a
new
down.
taxes. There would be no need.
Would you support a carbon tax? Some other candidates said they would.
Yeah, no, I would. But guess what? If you elect me, you're not going to have your taxes are going to be raised, not cut.
No, I get it, but when would you make these changes is my point, because the economy is in a bad state right now. You wouldn't, I mean, would you wait for unemployment to go under 2%?
No. I'd make the changes on the corporate taxes on day one. And the reason I'd make the change in the corporate taxes, it can raise $1.3 trillion if they just start paying at 28% instead of 21%. Guess what? If you elect me, you're not going to have your taxes are going to be raised, not cut.
You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year.
When President Trump and I took office, America had gone through the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. Because when Joe Biden was vice president, they tried to tax and spend and regulate and bail our way back to a growing economy. President Trump cut taxes across the board. Despite what Senator Harris says, the average American family of four had $2,000 in savings in taxes. And with the rise in wages that occurred, most predominantly for blue-collar, hardworking Americans, the average household income for a family of four increased by $4,000 following President Trump's tax cuts. But America, you just heard Senator Harris tell you, on day one, Joe Biden's going to raise your taxes.
I think what happens is if you do that, you're going to crash the market. We have a market that's going to be, I believe, by sometime early next year, could even be sooner, at record levels. You're going to crash the market. 401ks will be down the tubes. The wealth of the country will be down. No, he really wants to, just to put it more accurately, he just wants to raise everyone's taxes because they want to spend it on nonsense. They want to spend it on things that don't work. They want to give the money away. And I don't think people are going to stand for it. They want to, the Democrats want to raise taxes, and it's going to ultimately be everybody's taxes. That will kill the market. It'll kill everything that we're doing. It'll kill jobs, and it'll be very bad.
Our president knows who our enemy is. Our president clearly sees our enemy's agenda. We must get out there and support Donald Trump January the 6th, baby, in D.C. We must. The future of our republic is at hand. This is our time, America. This is our day. 2021 will be our year. No matter what happens, this is our time. This is our day. Phoenix Network family, I love you. Everybody that's involved here at my studio, I love you. And just a special shout out to all of those who follow me and think more highly of me than I do of myself. I appreciate you. I appreciate your love and support. Thank you again for all of your love and kindness. It will not go unnoticed. Again, I'm signing off. This is Greg Kelly from The Real Greg Kelly Show. Stay together, stay united, and stay in the fight. God is not dead. We are not done. We've got a country to save. I'll see you next time.